Hello and welcome to House of Anderson, the latest in the Houselights series examining the work of directors from start to finish. Their entire library, their entire oeuvre, as the fancy people would say. I'm one of your hosts, John Mills, and with me on this delightful journey in House of Anderson, which is a cutaway house where you can see everything happening all at the same time at any given moment, is my dear friend, Tristan Riddell. Tristan, here we are. We're going to be talking this week about the Royal Tenenbaums, and I know you're excited for this one. So how excited are you?
I'm so excited that you could say I'm true blue.
You're true blue. That's good. That's very, very good. Me, I'm just looking for a good cheeseburger. But while I look for that cheeseburger, you can go over to thenerdparty.com and find not just Houselights, but all of the terrific shows that we have over there. You can also reach out to us at thenerdparty.com/contact, find Houselights, drop a line if you want to. But most importantly, we would really sincerely appreciate it if you went to Apple Podcasts, left us a star rating and review, and just look for Houselights. Let people know what you think, which hopefully is very good because we would love to read about it here on the air with you. So thank you for listening. If you have the time, it'll be great. But here we are with the Royal Tenenbaums. I'm excited to talk about this one because this is yet another one where I have weird memories of a movie that I have seen because it came along at a very strange time in my life. But I want to just kick this off with one of my favorite questions, which is, Tristan, what was your first encounter with this, and how excited were you going into it?
This is a film that I didn't see right away. I wasn't the biggest... I don't think I became a Wes Anderson fan until Life Aquatic, which is the next one. And even that, I didn't see right away. I didn't see right when it came out. I saw Life Aquatic years later. I think it was when I was actually at film school in Los Angeles, and I had access to a gigantic library of films where we could just like go in, check out anything, take it home and watch it. For the longest time, that was my favorite Wes Anderson film. It wasn't until I, started dating my now wife where, I said, I was like, oh, have you seen Life Aquatic? She's like, yes, but have you seen Royal Tenenbaums? I was like, no, I don't think I have. I don't know if this. I'm just dipping my toe in the pool of Wes Anderson. And she's like, no, it's like the greatest movie of all time. You have to watch this. And we watched together, and I didn't really dig it that much. Like, I didn't jive with it. Like, the humor didn't catch me. I was like, no, Life Aquatic's way better. And she thought I was insane. And she kind of worked on me for years. And then she finally made me realize the error of my ways. And it was like, no. Royal Tenenbaums is my favorite Wes Anderson film of all time. Like, it was a lot of times with Anderson, I have to watch his movies more than once. I don't know what it is. Like, I'm a Wes Anderson fan. I like his movies for the most part. For some reason, I don't connect with them right away. I have no idea what it is about him or his style or the stories that he tells, or the actor's delivery, but I can't get in the right frame of mind until the second or third time I see it. And Tenenbaums was definitely one of those. And to me, this is not just his greatest work. It could be, one of the greatest comedies of this century, because it came out in 2001, which was 20 years ago. That's so crazy. Long story short, home video with my now wife, who showed me the way of how great this movie is. How about you?
Okay. So the movie comes along. I obviously, as we talked about before, I'd been a huge fan of Rushmore. Absolutely loved it. Saw it 2 days in a row. Flash forward to when Royal Tenenbaums is out and about. It was a very different time in my life. I had broken up with my girlfriend of 3 years, or rather, my girlfriend of 3 years had broken up with me rather spectacularly. My brother got married. I was still working as an assistant manager at a toy store, and then I got laid off. And so a lot of weird life altering things happened in the months leading up to it. And so what happened was I was laid off, and I was going along, and I decided that I was going to literally spend a day at the movie theaters. And Royal Tenenbaums was one of the movies that was playing, and I went in and checked it out and had a good time with it. I enjoyed the other movies as well, but it didn't knock my socks off the first time I saw it. The second time I saw it, I got a bigger kick out of it. And I have continued to enjoy it at about the same level ever since. But at that first showing, it was just sort of couched in a very weird time. But as a result, it's always attached to that time. But what was interesting about it for me watching it was, even to this day, I don't get the same thrill from it that I did with Rushmore. Rushmore still gives me that giddy thrill, whereas I have a little bit more trouble connecting with this one. And so I want to ask you, like, what is it that elevates this to the next level for you? Like, what is that special spark that maybe I'm missing? Because it feels like we sort of had a role reversal between Rushmore and here.
I think that's probably pretty accurate, because I don't connect with Rushmore at all. Like, I don't think it's a bad movie. It's just not there for me. I just don't get it, like, quote unquote. But with Tenenbaums, I absolutely get it. Like, I am on that wavelength. It is very much my sense of humor. I think for me, it's the quotability. Just there's so many just one-liners that just pop into your head, especially from Gene Hackman's character. Like when he sees Danny Glover for the first time, he's like, "Oh, look at that old grizzly bear." The movie is just filled with little moments like that. And I think that every single character is perfectly distinct and different. And I feel like this movie has a fantastic intro where it's complete exposition. That's all it is. It's just exposition, but it's so engaging and interesting and entertaining and colorful. And it feels like, even though it's shot in New York, it doesn't feel like the stereotypical movie New York, because Anderson stayed away from any kind of landmarks and any kind of skyscrapers and everything like that. You can see a little bit of yourself in every single character, because I feel like we're dealing with such different archetypes, and you want things to go well, but you realize that these people are so damaged from their own genius, from their own upbringing, constantly making mistakes. And I like how at the end of the film, like when they said that, like, Margot finally wrote a new play, it had mixed reviews. It wasn't like, like she came back and it was a tour de force. It was wild success. I feel like that's kind of the thing where, the dad comes back and they do forgive him, but it doesn't mean that they had the best of relationships and he only had a little bit more time after that. It wasn't like, nobody rode off into the sunset. And the cinematography, the centered cinematography, how well and organic the house is. It feels like it's its own. I know this is so trite to say, but it feels like it's its own character. Just how subtle Bill Murray is as Raleigh St. Clair.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic. But that's a tired statement. Is like, Bill Murray was fantastic in a Wes Anderson movie. It's sort of like, that's a given. So
yeah, I think it's just like, I think that every actor was perfect for the role, and every single one of them was firing on all cylinders. I feel like every single actor got it. Every single actor showed up and realized what they were doing, and just nailed the character.
I agree with you. The performances are very strong, and I agree with you that the actors deliver what they need to. I actually think that Gwyneth Paltrow her skills were perfectly utilized.
Yes.
Right? She has a very specific range in which she excels, which is not saying I'm limiting her or anything like that, but every actor has a zone that they're best in. Murray knows what his zone is too. And Anderson knows how to get him in that zone and make it comfortable for him. The curious thing, and I think this is one of my hurdles, is watching it this time, I saw Hackman. For some reason, there was a part of me that was reminded of James Caan in Bottle Rocket, where there's nothing wrong with the performance. And in fact, I think it's a fine performance by a fine actor with a long, rich history. But there's something about it that doesn't quite land for me. And I almost wonder if there's a part in my brain that's trying to assign Bill Murray to the role, because I love him so much in Rushmore, and that there isn't enough distance between Rushmore and this. I wonder if my reaction to this would be better if the next time I watched it, I was a long way away from Rushmore. Because the way it occurred historically is I saw Rushmore, then I saw this. And this time I saw Rushmore, then I saw this. And I just wonder if there should be some distance between the two, because I almost wonder if my brain is trying to put Bill Murray in Gene Hackman's role.
I feel like Bill Murray is too, for lack of a better term, likable to be Royal Tenenbaum. I think Gene Hackman can play a jackass perfectly. Like when, Danny Glover's character, Henry Sherman, says, like, I can't remember exactly what it is. It's like, I don't think you're a bastard. I just think you're a real son of a bitch. Something like that. Like, it was something akin to that. I don't think you can do that with Bill Murray. I'm like, I know that, of course he's played jackasses before. You look at Ghostbusters, and everything like that. But, Groundhog's Day and everything like that. But it's a different level. I don't think I could really see Bill Murray abandon his kids like that or be that obtuse. Maybe I'm being clouded like by his Raleigh St. Clair character. Maybe I'm clouding my thoughts because, like, you look at Life Aquatic, Bill Murray totally can play a jackass. So I feel like I'm just talking myself out of it.
No, I actually think you have a great point in that I have to acknowledge that it is just, for some reason, I just have that bias in my brain. And because you're absolutely right, Murray doesn't have, it's always dangerous to say doesn't have, because you never know what an actor has until they bring it. I do not know if I would have bought into Murray as Royal Tenenbaum either, which is why it makes it even less logical. Like, I'm acknowledging that it's not a logical desire that my brain has here to put him in that role. He probably would not have worked as well as Gene Hackman does, because again, Hackman gives a fine performance. Maybe it's just that I don't like Royal Tenenbaum so much, right? There is such a thing as a performance that's too successful. And I always go back to Michelle Rodriguez in Lost. Everybody hated her character so much that when she got killed, they had to kill another character so that you wouldn't think that when Michael shot her, it was no big deal. They openly admitted that. They were like, everybody hated her character so much that if Michael just shot her, everybody would say, and? So he had to shoot somebody else that everybody liked.
And they both got DUIs on the same weekend, but...
Irony, my friend. That's what it is. Yeah, Lost had a great way of dealing with rule breakers, didn't they?
I think that's the thing, though, is that, like, you don't need to like Royal. In fact, you're not supposed to like Royal.
Right.
And I think that you can recognize that Gene Hackman gives a good performance as Royal and not likable, where you still want the catharsis of a repaired relationship. And I've seen a lot of people say that he doesn't deserve a redemption arc. And I'm like, well, I get that. It's hard to say that overall. Like, it's hard to say that, like, yes, he abandoned his kid. Yes, he was a horrible father. But, like, I'm a big fan of the redemption. I'm a big fan of a redemption arc. But he's still a jackass. Like, he's still Royal. He's still a horrible person. But yet you, like, if anything, you want to see the repaired relationship just for the kid's sake.
Right.
On top of anything, like, even not just for Royal, but just so that kids can let go of some of their anger. And with Bill Murray, to kind of tie it back, I feel like no matter what, how big of a jackass Bill Murray can play, you would still be like, but it's Bill Murray.
Yeah. And that is a very valid point. I think that speaks to Anderson going into not resting on his laurels and going into an area that's a little bit richer than Rushmore. Rushmore is very much a fantastical tale. It's the heady ego trip of a high schooler. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is a much more mature zone that we're in. And Anderson is exploring some themes. To your point, I too love the redemption arc. And it is more important than just for the person to whom it happens. But there's also something to be said. And I think that this is one of the messages of the movie. Feel free to disagree with me on this, is that sometimes there's just a limit to who a person can be. And Royal was as good a person as he was going to be at any point.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
And there's a ceiling, and you have to accept that. And that's part of the whole redemption and forgiveness part of it, is you have to recognize that person is who they are. I can't do anything for that. I think, as you state very, very well, it's about the kids giving that up and saying, I can't make him be the dad that I wanted him to be. He is who he was. I am who I am. And we just have to relate to each other the way that we are.
Yeah, and I think it's very much about letting go of that anger, letting go of the jealousy, letting go of past mistakes. Because, I mean, you and I have talked about this in great detail about how there's this current trend that's been going on for many years that people have to earn forgiveness. You see it a lot online where if somebody doesn't ask for forgiveness, then you shouldn't give them forgiveness. And even if they do ask forgiveness, you don't owe them anything. And you and I are very much of the philosophy that forgiveness is good for the soul. It's great for the person who is doing the forgiving. It's the ability to release that anger and release that grudge is great for the individual that has been harmed, not necessarily the person who did the harming. And this is a movie where a lot of people have to let go and accept who they are and accept their situation. And because you look at the romance between Richie and Margot, they didn't end up together.
Yeah.
You know, like they recognize that they had feelings for each other, but they're just like, I think this is all that it's going to be. This is all that we can give each other. And that's kind of the same thing between the kids and Royal, and also with Royal and Etheline. He had to realize that, like, he doesn't own her, and she doesn't owe him anything.
Right.
This was of like, this is who I am, this is who she is. I just need to if I truly do care about her, I need to let her go. And Eli just accepting his faults. So I feel like a lot of this is about accepting your own situation and dealing with it instead of trying to forget it or bury it.
Now, see, in terms of the overall story, I think that these are all very valid points. In terms of the structure of the script, in terms of the way that the story is put together, I think we're pretty much on the same wavelength of what it's trying to say and how it's conveying, how successful it is in conveying it. How do you feel about just the structure? Are there any parts of the story where you think Anderson pushes that, I don't know what term, the artifice of it too far? And one thing, for instance, that always sort of strikes me is there's a slightly more, and I struggle for the term, I'm just going to say slapstick. There's a slightly more slapstick, not straight slapstick. This is not Three Stooges, but there seems to be slightly more of a slapstick feel to some of the situations and some of the things that the characters do.
As opposed to like Rushmore?
Right. I mean, I do. I think that there's, I don't know why it strikes me as such, but it just strikes me as a little bit, I guess,
is more quirky than Rushmore. I think you have the BB gun in the hand. You have Margot losing her finger. You have the dog fights. You have, Royal go-karting around and like running through traffic with his grandkids. You have the ending fight in the embassy backyard. You have Buckley dying. You have Margot hiding her smoking. You have them hiding out in a museum. It's all really quirky stuff. I think this is, how do I phrase this? So with Rushmore, you have Max's character who is really gifted in certain areas, but wants to be more mature than he is. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. I definitely related to it. But even if it's a fantastical telling of a grounded story, I'd say it's not as fantastical as Royal Tenenbaums, where like you have Dalmatian mice, you have
yes,
kid geniuses who put on one who puts on a play when she was 7 or 12 or something like that, and one who is a genius at international finance and who was a tennis pro from third grade. and they all live in this house on Archer Avenue. It's very Wes Anderson. It's very like it feels like Anderson becoming himself, becoming a little bit more aware of his own shtick.
In terms of that shtick, something that struck me this time, and I don't know if the timing lines up in any significant way, but something that kind of struck me was, do you think that Arrested Development owes a debt of gratitude to the Royal Tenenbaums?
I think there's definitely some correlations there, because you have the literal Arrested Development with some of these characters where I think the difference is that with the Tenenbaums, they peaked at a young age and then never grew beyond that. And the Bluth family never peaked.
Yeah, that's an extremely true statement. Yes.
But like you have both, rich families and a deadbeat dad, eccentric children, but I'd definitely think that they're much more vapid in the Bluth household than they are in the Tenenbaum household.
Right. So like the Bluths would be the idiot version of the Tenenbaums.
Yeah, I never really put that together, but I think you could definitely see a lot of parallels there.
Of course, watch me find out that Arrested Development was in development 2 years before this movie was ever made. And then my whole theory falls apart. But until I know otherwise, I'm sticking to it. Now, one thing I did want to ask was Owen Wilson. He's in Bottle Rocket. He's technically in Rushmore because he's the picture of the dead husband,
right?
In any shot where you see it. But then he comes back in full force here. So we have an opportunity to compare his performance in Bottle Rocket to his performance here in the Royal Tenenbaums. Do you see growth in terms of a Wes Anderson-y type of character? Do you see any sort of stagnation? Is he just being the same character from Bottle Rocket, just with different trappings? Where do you see him fitting in? Do you think that this is a more natural, better fit for him in terms of characters in a Wes Anderson movie?
I think this is definitely a much better fit. You see a little bit more of Owen Wilson in this one, where I don't think his character in Bottle Rocket is anything like his Eli Cash character. I don't think there's a lot of substance to Eli Cash. He's definitely a third tier character of the Tenenbaums, because like if you have the parents and the kids, he's the friend of the kids,
Mm-hmm.
And I never really quite understood the point of his character. I feel like he could have been cut from the film and not too terribly much would have been lost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was the catalyst for a lot of things. Like he was the catalyst for Margot and Richie kind of confronting their feelings for each other. He was a thorn in the side of Margot when it comes to Royal confronting her about what she's doing with Eli. I'm trying to praise Owen Wilson, but I'm not really doing that good of a job. I think I
agree.
I think I liked his performance, because there's certain moments that you feel like he's getting lost in it and he's having fun with it. Like it's like what my book presupposes is maybe he didn't,
yeah.
And
yes.
And then like when he's in the interview and he's like, Wildcat.
Yeah.
Wildcat. Like it's just, he has a lot of great moments. And like when Royal says, "I know you, asshole," and he just like waves to him.
Yes.
It's hilarious. He's hilarious. And I think he's much funnier in this than he is in Bottle Rocket, because in Bottle Rocket, he was just straight up annoying. Like I did not like him. And so, yeah, I think Owen Wilson definitely shines in this one, even if his character has a little bit of Indiana Jones syndrome.
I'm not going to ask you to expound on that. Instead, what I'm going to ask you is, once again, we have Luke Wilson refusing to play Owen Wilson's brother on screen, a baffling move. But, they're reunited from Bottle Rocket. And did you, same sort of question. Obviously, his character in Bottle Rocket's very different. Do you see a more natural fit for Luke Wilson? Because I will go ahead. I'll go ahead and kick this part off by saying that regardless of everything else, Luke Wilson's performance was the one that really nailed it for me. really just and I know I am not unique in that regard, but his role was the gut punch, and the scene where he cuts all of his hair and he attempts suicide and everything, like that is a deeply affecting moment in the film. So I mean, I guess I've answered my own question. I doubt that you differ too much about Luke Wilson, but what other sort of aspects do you see? What growth do you see in him between Bottle Rocket? I mean, we get to see him in a small role in Rushmore that I think is delightful as well. But what do you think about, the more dramatic aspect that he gets to indulge here as opposed to the more comedic?
It kind of makes me feel like I wish he would do more stuff like this. Mm-hmm. A little bit more subtle performances, understated, a little bit more dramatic. I'm not saying go full Robin Williams and play a serial killer, but
right. Although 1 Hour Photo is a great film.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. But yeah, like I want to see him. I'm not a big fan of his comedic roles. I'm really not. I haven't seen him in too terribly much, but I've seen him in a few, stupid comedies. Saw him in That 70s Show. I never really believed too terribly much that came out of his mouth. But for some reason in this movie, I think he's firing on all cylinders, and he is just so relatable, so believable, so empathetic and sympathetic. There's a reason why he's the one who tries to commit suicide from a story standpoint, is because you connect with him the most on an emotional level. You invest your emotions the most in him. And we see his downfall, and you see all these things in such a believable way. And Luke Wilson plays that stewing anger, like when Raleigh goes to him and says, like, "Can I confide in you?" And he's like, "I think, like Margot's cheating on me." And he's like, "What do you want to do? You want to find him?" Like it's just like that stewing anger. And then like when he punches the window, that was improv. That wasn't scripted. And so Bill Murray's reaction is actually real. And that's why they cut away so quickly, is because they thought he hurt himself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I did not know that bit of trivia. No kidding.
Yeah. This is by far and away my favorite Luke Wilson role, because I'm just not that big of a fan, but I'm a huge fan of him in this movie.
I do want to ask, actually, because Angelica Houston is a tremendously accomplished actress. She's, I think Angelica Houston is one of the overlooked talents of the last 50 years of film.
Very underrated actress. Very underrated.
Her name doesn't come to enough people's minds when they have those discussions. What do you think she brings? What do you think is the best thing that she brings to this? I know what my answer is, but I'd be curious what your answer is. My answer is that I think that she's the one that brings the grounding reality. She's the tent pole around which the circus of Wes Anderson revolves in this film. And I think that it is Houston's God-given talent that makes her able to do that. What do you see as what she brings? What makes her work as well as she does here?
I think I tend to agree with that, because I feel like that's one reason why she had to leave Royal, and she had to focus on the kids' education, because she's the smart one. They're geniuses, but she's the smart one, because she understands what they needed to survive, and she tried to cultivate their genius, and she knew that Royal being there was not going to help. And I feel like Angelica Houston, she's perfect for Wes Anderson films, because she is that grounding force, but at the same time, she exists in that reality. She exists in the family. She doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. She's not out of place. She belongs there, but yet she's the most quote unquote normal of them. But you can still see it in her expression. You can still see it in her mannerisms. And when she brings up the cake at Margot's birthday party with all the candles on it,
yeah,
and she just stands there and stares at Royal. She knows exactly what happened. She has no expression on her face, but you can read everything that's going through her brain. And I think that's the beauty of Angelica Houston in this movie, where like when she finds out that Margot smokes, like, well, how long have you been smoking? 25 years or something like that. And she's like, well, I think you should quit. Like it's just such a real mom thing to say to your kid. And on top of that, like when she's with Margot again, and she's like, I don't think it's very wise to have an electronic device in the bathtub with you. She's like, well, I have it tied. It's like, well, it can't be very good for your eyes. It's so perfect. I mean, like, of course, the script is doing the heavy lifting there, but she is the one that delivers it in a relatable, realistic, but yet hilarious way.
As we sit here talking about it, I almost wonder if there's, and the thing is, subtext is always tricky, right? Because there's the school of thought that whether the artist intended the subtext to be there, it's still there. And there are those that believe that the subtext has to be intended from the beginning. But I think that there's almost, intended or not, a subtext there of the kids survive because she gives the type of stability that Royal needed but never got. And conversely, if Royal had been there, he would have been the other child she was raising. And that's why she had to leave, because she could not devote. So there's almost a commentary there on maturity and growing up, just within the context of that is why, in fact, some marriages fail, is because the husband wants to be a kid too.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you need to be a parent. And so I think that that's where you have Danny Glover come in. And I think that's what's so interesting is I think he plays such a perfect antithesis of Royal Tenenbaum. And it's amazing because it's just the energy, that the body language that Danny Glover has is so and it's not like they're wildly gesticulating or really that expressive in a body language way, except for the fact he radiates this sort of calmer energy. You can tell that if these kids had had him as a father the whole time, things would have turned out even better for them. Whereas, Royal, it would have just been a train wreck, because the instant he comes back, chaos.
I was just about to say that, like, Royal is definitely chaos. He's just a bundle of string tied in a knot, and Henry is a straight line. Like he is that calming force. He's that calming tone, and he has a son. And you can tell that they have a good relationship. Like from the brief scene at the end that we see them together. And I think what I really liked about that is you had Chaz, who wanted nothing to do with Henry, because I feel like, he had such a negative reaction to Royal being his father. It's like, I'm a grown man. Mm-hmm. I'm a father myself. I don't need another father on top of Royal. And I love that line where it's just like, he's like, call me Henry. And he's like, no, I'd rather call you Mr. Sherman. It's like, you have known him for 10 years. He's like, yes, as your accountant, Mr. Sherman. And then we have that nice arc towards the end in the last scene where Henry's getting ready. He's putting on his tie for the wedding. You see his son there, and you see Chaz kind of interested, like, oh, hey, I might be gaining a brother here. And he goes to Henry and he says, he's like, I'm a widower too. And Henry takes that moment, just that short little moment, and puts his hand on it and says, I know you are, Chaz. It just shows the connection. Like there's no flowery dialogue. There's no inspirational quotes. It's just, I know you are. It's just that moment of connection and understanding. And that in itself, like just that quick moment of putting his hand on him, that little moment is also mirrored with Chaz and Royal at the end when Royal gives the Dalmatian to Chaz to give to his kids, where you start to see that breakdown. Well, Royal finally gives him this gesture, and it's a Dalmatian, which is just like the mice that Chaz invented. And it just shows another layer of understanding and care in that moment. Like Chaz starts to break down. He says, "It's like," and this was probably the most powerful moment for me in the movie when he says, he's like, It's like, I had a rough year, Dad. And he puts his hand on him and says, I know you have, Chaz. Again, it's that same moment of understanding from father to son, just like Chaz had with Henry, which is going to be his new kind of father, his stepdad, like that other type of father figure. And I think it's the only time when Royal actually touches Chaz, because like there's even when they're face to face in the closet, the board game closet, like they don't touch, they're just there screaming at each other.
Right.
And I love those emotional, intimate moments. And I think that's why I really enjoy Anderson's comedy, is because even if it is goofier or quirkier than Rushmore, it's still grounded in emotion and redemption, and it's character-driven comedy, in story-driven situational comedy, as opposed to just dick jokes and people falling on their heads.
And that the thing is that this will sound like I'm, dredging up old biases on my own part and everything. That's what makes Anderson, I think, such a joy, and why he stands out so much because when he came to prominence. Royal Tenenbaums, I think, cements it, but he's coming up with Bottle Rocket and Rushmore at a time when we're having the Austin Powers movies and Kevin Smith's heyday is happening. And I'm not saying that to take a dig at anybody. I'm just saying that's exactly what you were just talking about. Wes Anderson is not.
Yeah.
It's almost as if Wes Anderson, like it was one of his own scripts, he's the necessary antidote to what's happening, the sort of chaotic comedy that's happening at the time. I think that's why Anderson's movies wind up enduring, is because they're not reliant on anything but their own sensibilities. They're not trying to tap into what's popular in 2001 or 1999.
That's a perfect way of putting it, is that I know that this term is overused, but it's very timeless. And I think something that lends itself to that is definitely the 1970s aesthetic that Anderson chooses to give, like from the clothes to the set design to the props. Everything is 70s aesthetic. And so you immediately feel like it's out of time and it's out of place, but not in a negative way. And so it doesn't feel like a 2001 comedy. It feels like something that's always been around. And so because of that, it'll always feel that way. There's so many comedies, like think about like another, Owen Wilson property. You think about Wedding Crashers. That movie is very much of its time.
Yes.
It's very much of when that movie came out. This movie does not feel like a 2001 movie. This doesn't feel like the early aughts. It just is a quirky comedy that Anderson made, and it could have come out next year and it would still have the same impact, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Now, we've spent plenty of time heaping praise.
Yes. I was just about to say, I was just like, this one doesn't connect with you as much.
Right.
And so, and I that I'm not a crazy person, and I will accept criticism of a film that I love, and I try to see it. So is it the frenetic comedy? Is it the energy? Is it too active for you as opposed to Rushmore? Is that what you don't like about it? Or is it because you're constantly comparing it to Rushmore? Or can we remove Rushmore from the equation? And what doesn't land for you besides you getting distracted by Murray swapping with Hackman?
That's the thing, is during this whole conversation, I'm realizing that I can't quite put my finger on it. I think that most likely it's with the Eli business. It feels less organic than any of the weirdness in Rushmore. And you know what? Scratch it. I shouldn't be saying compared to Rushmore. It doesn't feel as organic as it should be. And so when it happens, I might enjoy it. I might think it's a funny gag, but it takes me out of it. Like up to and including when he crashes the car into the building. That's one of those, I just struggle with his whole arc in the film.
Yeah.
I understand he's the catalyst, but it's sort of like watching something and saying, I feel like there's a better way this could have happened. This could have been worked into everything. I do think that it's possible that in terms of Royal, I can't like him enough to root for the movie, if that makes sense. I can talk about and relate to Luke Wilson or Gwyneth Paltrow or Bill Murray, but the main character, quote unquote, of the film is one whom I don't like. And so if I don't like the main character, it becomes that much harder for me to invest emotionally with everything. So I can sit here and have this terrific discussion with you and then still lack a little bit of that connection. But I would then go an extra mile and say that I think it might be necessary for me to acknowledge that during this whole conversation has sort of been an amelioration of a lot of my problems, because as I'm talking through it with you, I realize I just haven't talked about this film with anybody. And so putting certain things in context, I'm starting to realize, well, maybe some of my criticisms are just biases that I got to sort of let go of and readjust my perception.
I think one thing that might be beneficial for you is to watch it at a random time next year, right, where you didn't just watch Rushmore, so you're not constantly comparing it. And it took seeing it through somebody else's eyes for me to truly appreciate this film, because I was kind of the same way, where I didn't really like Eli Cash, and you're not supposed to,
right?
But I didn't really like his storyline because of what both of us have agreed and said, that his storyline isn't really needed. You can erase him and kind of move on with the movie, even though I think he adds another layer to it, and I like the certain moments and the quips that he has and everything like that. I do enjoy it now, but would I miss him if he was gone? If I never knew he existed? Yeah, probably not. But with Gene Hackman, I can totally respect if you don't like the protagonist, then how can you go along with the film? Like, if he's the emotional center because it's his journey. I mean, it's his name is in the title.
Right.
Like, I can respect that, because there's a lot of times, I'm taking this example to the nth degree, but like,
yeah,
you have the anti-heroes of the new golden age of television. Like, you have the Walter Whites. And, like you people, I know I'm blanking on other examples, but like
well, I mean, that's really like the best example, isn't it? The best modern example.
That's the top modern example of the anti-hero, where you're not supposed to like him, but you end up rooting for him because the narrative structure is built towards the viewer enjoying the experience and watching him grow, or for, not necessarily grow, but change. And so you want to root for him. And you want to, like Walter White, you want to root for him. You want to see him win, but at the same time, winning is killing other people, feeding off of other people's addictions, ruining his family life. And so you start looking at it from a moral perspective, where you're just like, holy crap, I can't believe I'm rooting for this guy. I don't like this guy, but yet I'm invested in his journey. That shows the power of the narrative structure. And then you have somebody who, like Royal, where he's just a crappy father.
Right. Well, and that's sort of the thing too, is and another, if you want to add on another example than Breaking Bad, one that's even more difficult to go through, is Vic Mackey in The Shield.
Oh yeah.
That show will mess you up. But I think it's possible that what I need to do is I need to adjust my thinking, because I've always been particularly sensitive and hateful toward characters that are bad dads. It's a thing for me. I readily acknowledge that. But I do like this, where you're going with it, is that Walter's failure is necessary for everybody else to succeed. And so it does flip the narrative on it. And that's probably why there's an emotional punch at the end, is you suddenly realize, oh, no, it's good that things didn't work out the way that traditionally they should, the heartwarming, everybody comes back together and the family's all happy sort of thing. This really is about, this is what happened, this is how we coped, and this is how it's going to be. And we have to accept our little victories, like Chaz getting people just acknowledging him, acknowledging his pain. And, and so that's a win. That's a plus. And other people being settled with who they are and not unhappy about where they are. Even even Raleigh has a successful book and everything, which that to me, let me ask this question as the final one, because we always love to ask, where do you see the director and everything like that? To me, where I really see Anderson is the way Raleigh's story resolves itself. It's such a perfect, quirky, weird thing. His happy ending is what he got. That's exactly what he should have had, sort of thing. Where do you see Anderson in this? Visually, story-wise, where do you see him most?
Well, I want to comment on what you said about Raleigh first, because I do. It's true, because the person who got screwed the hardest is Raleigh, because his wife was cheating on him the entire time that he was married to her, and he never truly knew her, and she was so secretive. And like the first time we see Raleigh is he knocks on the door and he says super politely, "May I make you dinner?" Like you need to eat. Like, he wants to take care of her. He wants to do something for her. He's a nurturer, and she has zero interest in it because she's in her own head. She's depressed, and so she can't give him the time of day, and she's betraying their relationship, and he's trying to help this kid, but at the same time, like, make a name for himself professionally. So yeah, I really enjoy that, because he has the happiest arc because he got screwed the hardest.
Yes. Right.
Of course you have Richie who tried to commit suicide, but it was, what I'm saying? Like, that was an internal force. Like, Raleigh's pain was an external force.
Exactly. Raleigh has external happenings. It's not about internal resolution. It's about, he's the one that has stuff thrown on him, and just sort of like cutting through, sort of thing. So where do you see Anderson?
I know that this was my favorite question for when we did Christopher Nolan and when we did David Fincher. With Anderson, I think from here on out, it's going to be, where do you see Anderson? The first frame of every movie.
Yeah. That is a fantastic truism. Yes, you're absolutely right.
And so I think we might need to rephrase that question moving forward, or find something a little bit more unique for Anderson, because Anderson, as we move on, you start to see Anderson become self-aware, where he's just like, this is it's kind of like John Woo, where he has like 15 signatures. It's funny because some directors aren't aware of their own signatures, where they just do it. Like, this is how they make movies. And there's other directors, Anderson being one of them, where it's just like, yes, I need to put yellow in every single frame. I'm going to have wide angle shots where the person's standing dead center. I'm going to use this font. And, like, I'm going to kill an animal in some fashion, in a grisly fashion. And, it's just like, you're absolutely, like, you can tell that he's absolutely aware and becomes a little obsessed with himself. I feel like it hits its peak with Grand Budapest Hotel, where you're just like, oh my God, this is Anderson just making love with himself on screen.
Which, honestly, and we'll get to that. But the thing is, I think that when Anderson does it, it's a lot. This is going to sound so weird considering the trappings of an Anderson film. I think that when Anderson is self-aware and he is making love to himself, for some reason, I find it a lot less obnoxious and pretentious than when other directors do it.
That's really funny, because so many people think that Anderson is obnoxious and pretentious for doing the things that he's doing.
But I think when he hits that self-love moment, he's making fun of himself as much as he's acknowledging it. Like, it's this perfect feedback loop. It's a perfect circle of being for Anderson making a film, I think. And I still don't think, like, I'll have to go back and revisit it, but I don't think he hits it here. I think that this is still, he's on his way, but we agree. Bottle Rocket is just, the gears don't quite mesh, but you can see where everything's going. I think that Rushmore is that thing where it's like suddenly lightning gets caught in a bottle. You and I disagree about that, but lightning gets caught in a bottle. And then this is that sort of inevitable moment where he's not quite sure what the alchemy was the first time. he knows the ingredients he put in, but maybe it's a pinch too much of this time. I think that it's to the benefit of things that come afterward. I think it's better if he's not able to figure it out perfectly here. Now, keep in mind, I'm speaking from the perspective of somebody who thinks he did come up with it perfectly in Rushmore. You would have a different take on it.
Bottle Rocket's its own thing. Rushmore, I think he's figuring it out, and I think he nails it in Royal Tenenbaums. And I feel like we see this era of Anderson for a while. I feel like Royal Tenenbaums, Life Aquatic, Darjeeling Limited, those three are very much in the same vein. It's very much like you see the style of those three films, and you can very much tell, okay, this is Anderson of that time. I think once he gets to Moonrise Kingdom, I mean, Fantastic Mr. Fox is a different story. Like it's complete. You know what I'm saying. But once you get to Moonrise and Grand Budapest, that to me is what feels like modern Anderson, where it's much more pastel and polished and jokey and goofy, and I feel like non-Wes Anderson fans love Grand Budapest Hotel and Moonrise Kingdom more than people who have been with him since the beginning. Interesting.
That'll be a very interesting discussion to get to when we get there.
Again. Yeah, I feel like I'm going off here, but like one thing that I think the cinematography, since we're talking about like where we see Anderson, this is the cinematography of this film is so spot on and so Anderson. And one thing that I absolutely love is that he's used the same cinematographer for every single one of his films. It's live action films. Robert Yeoman is his name, and I think that's so rare over this span of time to have one cinematographer for everything. It really shows, and it's really interesting because oftentimes when we talked about when Pfister left Nolan, we asked ourselves, Interstellar is the first non-Pfister Nolan film. What's it going to look like? Is it going to look crazy different? Is it not going to look like a Nolan film? Well, it looks like a Nolan film because that's what he wanted. And when you look at Yeoman and you think like, oh, well, maybe that style is more Yeoman than it is Anderson, but this is the same guy who shot Dogma and The Squid and the Whale, Red Eye, and Yes Man and Whip It and Bridesmaids and The Heat and Spy and Ghostbusters, the new one, and everything like that. So he can obviously vary his style towards the director. And so I think it's just further proof that no, this is Anderson. Like they have a great relationship, obviously, but the cinematography is definitely the Anderson influence. And so that's where I see it.
Absolutely. I've got a lot to think about coming out of this. Where do you rate? I mean, I think it's a given. I think we know where you're going to go with this, and you're giving it what out of what?
I'm giving it 5 stars. I think this is, I don't often give that 5-star ranking, but 5 stars for Royal Tenenbaums. I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. I think it fires on all cylinders. Even though I feel like you could remove Eli Cash, I think he adds more than what would benefit from him being taken away. And I think that would be my only criticism of the motion picture, is because this is so quotable. This is so like Bill Murray saying, "I just want to die," and then about to eat the cookie, and then puts it back down. It's that subtle genius that is all throughout it. And even though Gene Hackman had a horrible time filming, I had a great time watching him.
I wound up giving it 4. There's a part of me, again, coming out of this discussion, I'm always left with this feeling that I should like it more than I do.
I'm surprised that you're giving it a 4. I mean, that's a great rating.
Yeah, it's a movie I like. It's just, I don't know why. Like now I feel like I'm trapped in a Wes Anderson script where it's like, that's a good rating. Why is it? But it's not good enough. I don't feel like it's a good enough rating for a Wes Anderson movie. And so that's just where I am with it. So you give it 5, I give it 4. If anybody wants to reach out to you and talk about your rating for it, where can they reach you?
Well, you can find me on Letterboxd at The Insane Robin, or you can find me on Twitter under the same username. Those are the two best places to reach me. But as John talked about at the top of the show, go to the nerdparty.com/contact, select Houselights, send us a note. Let us know what you think of Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums and anything else you want to talk about. And we would love to hear from you. We love interacting with people on Twitter too. We have a couple of people who interact with us regularly on Twitter about Houselights, and it's always fun to hear people's reaction and kind of watch the films with us. That's one big reason why we wanted to do this show, is because we wanted to have our audience watch the movies with us week to week. So John, where can they find you?
Well, you can look for Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE, on your social network of choice. I have the most fun, unquestionably, on Letterboxd and Goodreads. Letterboxd especially, because I watch a lot of bad movies. And so I'm trying to make those reviews really interesting for people. Tristan always asks why I watch these bad movies. And I said, because I grew up watching bad movies. Therefore, I do. Anyway, you can also find me here on the network, co-hosting a Star Wars podcast called Aggressive Negotiations with Matt Rushing. And, pulling guest appearances on different shows out there and stuff like that, including on Missing Frames here on the network and everything like that. So thank you for entering House of Anderson.
And we cannot wait for you guys to tune in next week, where we talk about The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.